Hello. Welcome. Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Our names are Ammon, Topher, and Micah, and we are the Three Brothers.
Brothers.
The three
Brothers.
favorites.
Three favorite brothers. Welcome to this week's Come Follow Me discussion. We're going to give you our favorite insights, then we're going to talk about them.
And as always, we provide our papers for free. Follow the links always provided below to get the insights paper as well as our weekly weedings. The insight paper is what we're going over in this video, whereas the weekly weedings is a paper in which Ashley kindly combines this week's Come Follow Me scriptures with the church's manuals and the church's Come Follow Me manual and puts it into one easy to read document that is wonderful to learn and study from. And then members of the Zion Bus community will record that and they'll put it on our channel each week. It's up for you right now. Enjoy it. Great way to study the gospel. Great way to stay on track with the Come Follow Me program. And a great way to digest a huge amount of wonderful information in succession order very easily. So enjoy. Bellissimo.
Yep.
Enjoy the buffet.
Buffet.
The buffet. Oh, the weekly weedings. I love it. All right, so here we go. So we have Micah's insight number 1. So in the Come Follow Me manual, once again, the very first thing in the Come Follow Me manual for the week always seems to
It always hits.
always hits, sends me off, and I'm like, nah, gotta do it. Nah. So it says, seek for the things of a better world, and it says, for most people, being baptized is a reverent, peaceful experience. The baptism of Emma Smith and others, however, was disrupted by a mob who mocked them, threatened them, and forced them to flee. Later, just as Joseph was about to confirm the new members, he was arrested for upsetting the community with his preaching. In all this opposition, how could Emma find reassurance that she was doing the right thing? The same place we all find it. Through revelation from the Lord, he spoke to Emma about the things of a better world, his kingdom, and her place in it. He told her not to fear, to lift up her heart and rejoice, and to cleave unto the covenant she had made. And these words of encouragement and counsel are his voice unto all. And then I went down a little bit further into the introduction and timeline for the LDS Student Manual, which is provided in the weekly readings. And I got to a part where it said Emma Smith, the prophet's wife, was baptized on June 28th, 1830. And my mind just was blown. This was I don't know if I had ever realized this before. So, and I went to Ashley and I asked her, and her mind was blown too. She didn't make this connection either. So, reading this week, my wife and I realized that I had actually baptized Ashley on June 28th as well, but in the year 2007. So that was 177 years after Emma. And Ashley's baptism, and frankly, her life has been every bit as chaotic as Emma's. And no, Emma's answer from the Lord was not the same as everybody else's, right? Emma had Joseph Smith Jr. receive a special revelation directly for her to comfort her and assure her something I could not provide. I'm no Joseph. Right? I held no keys over her, obviously, when I baptized her. I feel like this point would be better written by Ashley. Unfortunately, you're stuck with me, your least favorite three brother. It'd be better for her than myself. I'm really just thinking about what Ashley went through in comparison, something people don't want to hear maybe, but they really need to hear. Oh, Emma was an elect lady who went through so much. How could we possibly judge her? Who has gone through what she went through? I hear things like this all the time. Well, you know what? My wife, Ashley, has gone through almost all the same things. I guess that means Ashley can apostatize now and take my children with her into another church, eh? Ashley's parents would coerce Ashley into a boat. That's actually supposed to be into. I can't write. Into a boat. And then they would take her out on the lake where she couldn't flee on foot. So she was trapped. And then they would sit there and scream at her. We would actually hear it from our cabin across the lake. They would scream at her for literally hours on end telling her she was joining a cult, telling her how awful of a human being and daughter she was, telling her how awful uh, she was in general, telling her how if she went through with the act of being baptized and joining the church, she would be dead to them. I could go on, but needless to say, it was awful. And it went on for literally 2 years straight while I was on my mission, and then another few months leading up to her baptism. The day of her baptism at the lake was no different. Her parents were just a few cabins down, but they did not come down to join Ashley at her baptism, deciding instead to blast music, drink beer at their cabin while angry. The whole time, Ashley knowing that she would, after her baptism, have to go home to this. Ashley didn't have the reassurance of a prophetic revelation to keep her going. She only had her testimony. There was an abundance of the Spirit of the Lord when I baptized Ashley in the lake that I met her at, and all felt right, all felt calm, all was still, despite the raging chaos that was our lives. No prophetic guidance, just testimony in the Spirit. Ash and I worked up the courage to ask her parents for permission to marry shortly after this event. Her parents refused and said if we married, it would be against their wishes and they wouldn't support it, and they lived up to that. Ashley's parents threatened and fought Ashley the entire next year. And I'm the entire next year, I mean, was because we waited the full year to be sealed in the temple, for that was the rule at the time, and we wanted to be obedient and not cut corners. Ashley's parents started a literal fist fight with Ashley, throwing fists at her the day before her wedding. Ashley's parents literally showed up at our honeymoon and threatened us, cutting short our honeymoon in half. Ashley, for many years after, would deal with mobs of her family members randomly showing up at our apartment or a place of work, harassing her, calling her all sorts of names, as well as threatening her. At one point in time, they were actually threatening and tried to kidnap her, put her in a car, and bring her in because she was, according to them, mentally unwell and was brainwashed by a cult. So they were going to actually try to kidnap her. Ashley suffered with infertility for 5 to 10 years, with miscarriage after miscarriage, losing child after child, and the whole time, one time it was twins, and the whole time she had to deal with me as a husband, someone who took the gospel of Christ dead seriously, which meant our life in and out of the church was never easy. The amount of persecution I've received from inside the church, let alone outside the church, by its members for simply being obedient and taking the gospel of Christ seriously, might shock some. Probably won't shock members of Zion or Bust. And we did it all alone. We had no support group. We had no friends in the gospel. We had no Brigham Young at our side. We had no Pratts at our side. I didn't have these two Pratts, these two brothers, sons of thunder. I didn't have these two with me at the time. No family support. We did it all alone, and I did it in a foreign land. Just us and the Lord and our testimonies. So, what's the point of this rambling? Elder Bruce McConkie said, in the early days of this dispensation, Emma Smith, the prophet's wife, was in such complete harmony with the Lord's program that he forgave her of her sins and addressed her as an elect lady. John the Beloved used a similar salutation to certain chosen women of his day. Just as it is possible for the very elect to be deceived and to fall from grace through disobedience, so an elect lady, by failing to endure to the end, can and will lose her chosen status. Joseph Fielding Smith taught, quote, Emma Smith is admonished to beware of pride and told to let her soul delight in her husband. After the death of the prophet Joseph Smith and his brother, the patriarch Hiram Smith, Emma Smith refused to hearken to the counsels of the presiding authorities of the church. President Brigham Young endeavored to treat her with kindness and offered to furnish her with teams and provisions and care for her and bring her to the Salt Lake Valley, but she refused this offer, resented the counsels of the apostles, and departed from the body of the church, end quote. The point is that despite all that Ashley and I went through, right, we know that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is Christ's church. And we never received even one iota of the blessings, comfort, miracles, etc. that Emma Bitterman received. Not one iota. We're still here. We're still kicking. It can be done. We are living proof of that. Your life might seem difficult. It might seem impossible, etc. But I can assure you that you can do it. You can do it, and the Lord expects you to do it. If you want to use Emma Bitterman as an example to justify yourself and your lack of obedience and faith, you go right on ahead at your own spiritual downfall. Because thousands of men and women like my wife and I will stand opposed. as examples of those that moved with fear and saved themselves and condemned the world. It absolutely can be done. There are no second chances for exaltation. This is it. In the student manual this week, beware pride lest thou should enter into temptation, we read. Oliver Cowdery was instrumental in the translation and publication of the Book of Mormon, and he recently been ordained as the second elder of the church when the revelation recorded in Doctrine and Covenants 23 was received. However, the Lord, knowing Oliver's strengths and weaknesses, counseled him, beware pride. Regarding this council, President James E. Faust of the First Presidency said, Oliver had great intellect and enjoyed marvelous spiritual blessings. However, over time he forgot the Lord's warning, and pride entered into his heart. Brigham Young later said of this pride, I have seen men who belonged to this kingdom who really thought that if they were not associated with it, it could not progress. One man, especially, whom I now think of, was particularly gifted in self reliance and general ability. He said as much to the prophet Joseph a number of times as to say that if he left this kingdom, it could not progress any further. I speak of Oliver Cowdery. He forsook it, and it still rolled on, and still triumphed over every opposing foe, and bore off safely all those who clung to it. End quote from the student manual here. Do what is right, let the consequences follow. If there was no excuse for Oliver, then there's no excuse for you, I, Emma Bitterman, or anyone else. We have no excuses.
Yeah, I love it. I saw your post. You shared this on Facebook, obviously, like you normally do, share your insights on Facebook, and I loved seeing it with the pictures that you shared. Like little young Micah and his wife, baptizing Ashley, and then your wedding and things. And I I I love your story, honestly. Like it's kind of like honestly, there's a bit of a fairy tale kind of aspect to it as well, in all honesty. Like it's like not, it's very rare, like it's a really rare, unique sort of story you have. And I think what matches that and makes it even more meaningful is the opposition that you had to experience during the whole thing. So, often if you were to compare it to a movie that has no opposition is not a good movie, right? You know what I mean? Like the storyline of a movie, if there's no sort of you know ebb and flow and opposition and success, right, it's not a very good movie. It'd be very boring. And so to me, like, not only does it say a lot about you and Ashley, but it's also I don't know, it's just a way better it's a way better story. But it's I just think it means more. It certainly means more, you guys having gone through that with that opposition. It just, I don't know. And it also it also makes me wonder and think about, that's the way you started. That's what you did against all opposition, against family, against everything. Like, how much the Lord can bless you. Do you know what I mean? Like after you've gone through all that, and without the support, like like you compare it to this to Emma, right? Now, let's be honest, she had a hard life. We all know this. She had a very hard life. We all appreciate and understand that. That still gives you no excuse at the end, at the end to go the wrong direction, to drop off and make the wrong decision and things, right? So, um, but you guys had it tough, but she had Joseph Smith there to give her such guidance and such revelation, such support. Yes, they had it very, very hard, but you guys sort of did it on your own, and I just think it's a really kind of a beautiful, awesome I don't know. I just loved with the pictures. I love seeing it, and it's really makes it really real, and hearing you tell it makes it really real, and it is real, and it was really cool to see. Um, so what else did I write down here? Sorry, give me a sec.
And I am no Joseph, so
No,
that's
yeah, and that's to your point and credit though, right? Like look what normal people can do, faithful, just against all odds. Let's say it's against all odds. Do you know what I mean? You got a family who doesn't want, her own family wouldn't support any of that, and yet you went forth and did it. It was right. You knew it was right. It felt right. You went forth and did it. Like, and in all honesty, and then you had rough times, even with the miscarriages and things like that, and you guys have just stuck it out, and um, that's, I don't know, that just like salt of the earth kind of business. You know what I mean? It's a real like just get into it, get through it. Trials come, get through it. Opposition will come, get through it, and the Lord will bless you as you do it. There was one other thing I wanted to mention as well is the Lord called Emma an elect lady, and I think she's referred to an elect lady all over the place. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure you guys will have heard. But when people talk about Emma and they call her an elect lady, it's said like she's like some super special, amazing, like like when you hear elect lady, you think, oh, she is like, oh, that means that she is like calling election made short. That might mean she's gained her exaltation. That's you have all these connotations that go with that title, elect lady. But the manual this week points out what that actually means, and it was really kind of eye-opening and clarifying for me. So there's a section in the manual this week, and it was called "In What Sense Was Emma an Elect Lady?" And I'll just read this quickly. It's just one little paragraph. Emma had received a call to serve as a companion and help to Joseph Smith, the prophet of the Restoration. In this revelation, so this is section 25 of Doctrine and Covenants, she was also called an elect lady, and later she received an additional responsibility when the prophet Joseph Smith organized a relief society. And the prophet wrote, so Joseph Smith wrote this, I assisted in commencing the organization of the Female Relief Society of Nauvoo in the Lodge Room. Sister Emma Smith, President, and Sister Elizabeth Ann Whitney, Sarah M. Cleveland, counselors. I gave much instruction read in the New Testament and book of Doctrine and Covenants concerning the elect lady, and showed that the elect meant to be elected to a certain work, and that the revelation was then fulfilled by Sister Emma's election to the presidency of the society, she having previously been ordained to expound the scriptures. So, being an elect lady means that you're like elected to the work, right? But that's technically that's everyone, like, right? Like, I mean, there's the chosen, the called, and the so, is that the called and the chosen? Many are called, few, many are called, few are chosen. Everyone's called to it. Everyone technically is an elect person. Once they join the church, they have responsibility. Everyone's called, like the Lord has an election for you, a responsibility for you. So I don't know. I'm not downplaying Emma and what she did and things. She definitely trailed off at the end there. But yes, she went through a lot of things and she did a lot of amazing things and lived it hard and tough and all that. Yes, she was an elect lady because she was called to do some amazing things with the establishment of the Relief Society. But you know what? Everyone who lives the gospel faithfully is an elect person, and it's up to us. And again, so she trailed off at the end. It's up to us to not do that. Again, Micah and Ashley, really good examples of this. They're just sticking through it, man. And again, beautiful to see. But yeah, just want to clarify that elect doesn't mean she's like some special exalted person just because the Lord called her that. It's basically we can all be that or are that. Anyway.
It's nice going back over personal experience like this because I think most normal people that don't dwell on their own past or dwell on trauma and that type of thing, we don't tend to just think too much back on these experiences. But when you take the time to go back on them, they are quite special, and you can see how much you've grown and how grateful you are for them because they've built you up to become the person that you are today because of the choices that you made in those moments. At any point in time during Ashley getting baptized, and her family screaming at her, or you deciding to get married, at any point in that years-long period of trials, you could have gave up, given in, conceded a little. All right, fine, she won't get baptized. We'll just get married civilly, or she'll join the church, but I don't know, make up whatever story you will. You could have given in so many different ways to have tried to make your life easier, and think from a worldly perspective. And I know you, and I know a little bit about her family. From a worldly perspective, how much more joyful from a Babylonian perspective life would have been had you conceded and given in here a little bit, and you know what I mean? But you chose to stay strong throughout all those points, and throughout all those points it was pain, and it was sorrow and it was tough. And yet how grateful you would be now to look back at all those moments and say, we're here now because we made these decisions. Despite the fact that we've sort of lost some family along the way because of it, or we've lost some access, or we've lost some moments that we could have had, look what we've gained from an eternal perspective. And that's a beautiful thing. And I do love that you can share those stories, and any intelligent person in considering the scriptures this week and in considering the story of Joseph Smith and Emma Bitterman, can compare them and say, look, there are some similarities here, except that maybe we didn't have as close connection to the prophet of God even necessarily as Emma Bitterman did. And look what happened to Emma Bitterman. And therefore, if me being a normal person had given in any of those moments, walked away from the church, sat on that little plateau that we had, walked away, said, I've done enough. I don't need to do anymore. The Lord is going to, forgive me. The Lord is going to understand. People would laugh at that if we had said that. Members of the church would laugh at that if we had said, no, we've done enough. Surely my husband's good enough. Surely Mike is good enough. He'll keep going to church. Mike is good enough. I'm Ashley. Let's say I'm not going to go to church. I'll remain married to him, but I'll never go to church again. And surely the Lord is going to find a way to drag me up to exaltation along with him. No one would believe that. No one would consider that fair and any, equitable of the Lord to do that. So why are we all so readily jumping in and making that kind of a compromise for Emma Bitterman? And I think these stories are helpful because I think the reason that people do it a lot of the time, and there's a lot of these theories, a lot of the time they do it because they witness what she went through and they say, well, surely she can be the exemption. But then again, when you hear stories like Micah just shared, is she the exemption? Because if she is, then Micah and Ashley are, even though they didn't give in. Let's say they did. They'd be the exemption. What about me? I've got a story. Could I be the exemption as well? No, it doesn't work like that. The Lord is fair and reasonable, but he is also just, and he is unchanging. And so he will do things the right way, his way, throughout all time, and everybody is treated equally, one like unto another. So Emma Bitterman, unfortunately, she will end up where she ends up. But yeah, grateful to hear those stories. Love it. Thank you for sharing that. It touched me, and it really made me reflect on my own story. And I'm grateful for what I've been through to where I am now. I'm up. Okay, Carry on. Ammon's insight number 1. So the Lord gave the following counsel to Joseph Smith Jr. in D&C section 24. Magnify thine office, and thou, after thou hast sowed thy fields and secured them, go speedily unto the church which is in Colesville, Fayette, and Manchester, and they shall support thee. And I will bless them both spiritually and temporally. But if they receive thee not, I will send upon them a cursing instead of a blessing. In the student manual, it says, if they receive thee not. The saints were to receive or sustain the prophet Joseph Smith spiritually and to assist him temporally. Those who receive the prophet today and act on his words will receive blessings, and those who do not will experience consequences. Pause there. So it's not like you do the right thing, you get blessings. You don't do the right thing, you just miss out. I think today we have this concept in mind that, well, if I didn't do it, I just miss out this time. No. You do the wrong thing or you don't do the right thing, both are bad, there will be consequences. And the Lord teaches us that these are actually cursings. Carry on. Sister Carol F. McConkie, First Council on the Young Women General Presidency, said, to be in harmony with heaven's divine purposes, we sustain the prophet and choose to live according to his words. In a world threatened by famine of righteousness and spiritual starvation, we have been commanded to sustain the prophet. As we give heed to, uphold, and affirm prophetic word, we witness that we have faith to humbly submit to the will, the wisdom, and the timing of the Lord. We heed prophetic word even when it may seem unreasonable, inconvenient, and uncomfortable. According to the world standards, following the prophet may be unpopular, politically incorrect, or socially unacceptable, but following the prophet is always right. Oof. The Lord honors and favors those who will heed prophetic direction. And I'll add my words to that. And so I'll reread the last line from the student manual, and then it goes into my and. This is my words. The Lord honors and favors those who will heed prophetic direction, and he curses those who reject prophetic direction. Blessings and cursings. From the student manual in Doctrine and Covenants Enrichment Activity for D&C 121, it says, the living oracle, God's spokesman in all things, those who criticize the prophet for speaking on matters that do not concern him, or who accuse him of not reflecting the will of the Lord, should consider the Lord's solemn warning carefully from D&C 121. And that cursing says, cursed are all those that shall lift up the heel against mine anointed, saith the Lord, and cry they have sinned when they have not sinned before me, saith the Lord, but have done that which was meet in mine eyes, and which I commanded them. But those who cry transgression do it because they are the servants of sin, and they are the children of disobedience themselves. And those who swear falsely against my servants, that they might bring them into bondage and death, woe be unto them, because they have offended my little ones, and they shall be severed from the ordinances of mine house. Their baskets shall not be full, their houses and their barns shall perish, and they shall themselves be despised by those that flattered them. They shall not have the right to the priesthood, nor the posterity after them from generation to generation. It had been better for them that a millstone had been hanged about their necks, and they drowned in the depths of the sea. It continues on in the enrichment, God's spokesman in all things, whether that rejection comes through open opposition to the prophet, through flippant disregard of his counsel, or through apathetic carelessness, the penalties for turning away the Lord's servants are serious. I've read something weird. And all they who receive the oracles of God, let them beware how they hold them, lest they are accounted as a light thing and are brought under condemnation thereby. Now I want to read a quote from our good mate, Bruce McConkie. Elder Bruce R. McConkie, believe in him, believe in his prophets, believe the words of his apostles and elders, believe and be blessed, disbelieve and be cursed. The first great test of mortality is whether men will believe the everlasting word when it is preached to them. Those who believe the truth can be saved. Those who believe a lie shall be damned. Brigham Young taught, there is one principle I would like the Latter-day Saints to perfectly understand, and that is of blessings and cursings. For instance, we read that war, pestilence, plagues, famine, etc., will be visited upon the inhabitants of the earth. But if distress through the judgments of God come upon this people, it will be because the majority have turned away from the Lord. Let the majority of the people turn away from the holy commandments which the Lord has delivered to us, and cease to hold the balance of power in the church, and we may expect the judgments of God to come upon us. But while 6/10 or 3/4 of this people will keep the commandments of God, the curse and judgments of the Almighty will never come upon them, though we will have trials of various kinds, and the elements to contend with, natural and spiritual elements. While this people will strive to serve God according to the best of their abilities, they will fare better, have more to eat and to wear, have better houses to live in, better associations, and enjoy themselves better than the wicked ever do, or ever will do. Close quote, Brigham Young. So, turning away the counsel of a prophet, whether it goes against our desires or our understanding of what constitutes sound advice, it will not just cause us to forfeit a blessing. When the prophet asks us to do something, we can't just say, oh, well, I'll do anything else that I'm asked to do. I'm not going to do this, but I'll just do anything else he says. I'll just do anything else that the prophet says, just not this thing. And I won't miss out on anything. I just, I'll do whatever, just not this thing. We can't say that. Not only will you miss out on promised blessings of obedience for that thing, but you will suffer cursings in its place. And these cursings are no joke. Like, we were just reading those scriptures, and the Lord himself is saying, woe be unto those people that do these things. Your priesthood is gone. And from generation to generation, there'll be cursings upon your people. They're no joke. Take a look at any of the judgments and cursings brought upon the disobedient throughout any time in history. Just have a look through any example in history of cursings brought upon a people by the Lord and throughout history. And the honest in heart that do that exercise will be filled with a righteous fear of God. Therefore, let us love God and fear him by following him and his prophets.
Amen. This is what scares me. I've said it many times, but this is what scares me about, like, I just always think of my friends, friends I grew up with, or my, good friends that I know serve missions, and now my family, my in-laws and things who serve missions and now don't go to church or even are actively like against the whole thing. And it's just like, oh man, it just makes me feel for them. You know what I mean? Like and yeah, want to do whatever I can for them. And unfortunately, just there's so little you can do sometimes. It's just really unfortunate. But um, because there is, I guess one thing that there is right and wrong, right? There's right and wrong. There's going to church or not going to church. There's believing, not believing. But then there's heeding the prophet or not heeding the prophet, right? Like I mean, so there's right and wrong in everything, right? We're all making mistakes constantly, but when the prophet has said to do something and you don't heed what the prophet says, that's a thing. That's a real thing. You know what I mean? Like, so that's really that's a real obvious way to go to go wrong, to go off the lot, to fall off the edge, to go, whatever, however you want to describe it. So that's a real bad, precarious line to cross. Um, because, and here's an interesting thing I was just thinking about while you went through this. If you do the right thing, there's blessings, right? The Lord blesses you. This is the first law of heaven. Obedience brings blessings, right? And here's what Ammon's just pointed out, that if you don't follow the prophet, right? So if you follow the prophet, blessings. If you don't follow the prophet, it's not. And we went through this last week. I had an insight on obedience last week, listening to prophets last week about, and we've said it a few times. Once you are following the Lord and the prophet and things already, you've left neutral ground, right? So this is why you don't get to go back to neutral ground. You don't get to like make a decision that I'm not going to do this thing and then expect to stay where you are and be chill and be cool. You're not there anymore. You've made that choice. You've moved into into that path. You don't get to go back to where you were. The decision's made. You've chosen a team. What you're actually doing is abandoning that team, if you want to put it that way, right? So there's penalties for that in anything. You know what deserters in a war get? I don't have to tell you, So you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So it's the same thing, right? Unfortunately, I'm just trying to make it black and white here. So, but here's what's interesting to me is if you think about it, the Lord can bless you when you're obedient, but he's saying that when you're disobedient and don't obey the prophet specifically, you're cursed. If you think about it, the disparity between being blessed by the Lord and being cursed by the Lord, that is a chasm very, very wide. You do not want, yeah, that is, the difference between just being blessed and not being blessed, as that's a difference too. But being blessed versus being cursed, that is huge. That is a very big gap you don't want to mess with. I really just I really don't want the Lord to curse me, man. Like honestly, I just can't fathom that. Um, so anyway, there was a lot of great stuff in here. It did make me think again, like so Sister McConkey, Carol F. McConkey, like her quote's really good, and it reminded me of the ones I used last week. And there was a whole bunch of Harold B. Lee ones, if you recall, and he said similar things. Like he said, it may contradict your political views, it may contradict your social views, it may interfere with some of your social life. And she says, it may be inconvenient, uncomfortable, unreasonable, politically incorrect. These days, that's getting more and more common. The political incorrect, because society's like, this should be normal. This should be normalize this, normalize that, normalize. It's like, how about we don't normalize all these wicked practices? Can we just not? How about we normalize listen to the prophet? How about that? So yeah, it may not be easy, right? But that's also the point, isn't it? Like the Lord wants to bless you. Is it meant to be easy all the time? For the Lord to do that? Like obedience is not an easy thing necessarily. It will contradict a lot of our views and um personal experiences and personal preferences and all that. But that's the whole point, because the Lord otherwise would be blessing everyone for doing nothing. It'd be easy mode, and then everyone's blessed, and it's like, what are we doing here? Um, and just lastly, it's sort of scary to me as well what Brigham Young was saying. It's like kind of almost a balancing game. He's like, if the majority of the church are faithful, like versus like if the majority of the church aren't. He's talking figures like 3/4 and 6/10, and it's like, man, are we this is what we're talking here? This real teetering game here, where like we're almost on the edge. And you know what? Who knows? I mean, I can't comment and tell you the exact state of the church right now, but if we ever have a church, if we ever have that going on in the church, wouldn't it be now? Like it almost seems like that now would be the time where it's teetering. I don't know. But it's scary. That's all I wanted to say on that. But it's the disparity between being blessed and cursed, that is monstrous. And follow the prophet, normalize following the prophet.
Again, normalize it
Yes.
again.
Yes.
Seems like it was there before. So what you just said there, Topher, it's interesting about the obedience thing, and maybe we've said this before in the past, but it just kind of once again clicked again for me, and it's like, oh yeah, duh. It's like you're saying it was not going to be easy, right? Like it doesn't have to. It's a lot of times it's going to be difficult, and all of a sudden it just occurred to me, well, if we were going to do it naturally on our own, like I'm going to go and eat some ice cream. I'm going to go,
Hmm.
if I'm naturally going to do this thing on my own, we wouldn't need the prophet to tell us.
Yeah.
So by very definition, most things a prophet comes out and tells us to do will be things we naturally aren't doing and naturally
Hmm.
don't want to do. That's why he has to tell us. So
Yep.
so it's by very definition. It's like, I've never heard a prophet come out and say, you know what, we need to eat more ice cream. And you probably never will. You know? Yeah, that's yeah, make following the prophet great again. Yes, I like it. That's good. We didn't put that on a shirt. Put that on a hat and sell
The
it.
prophet, like everyone's happy to eat ice cream, and the prophet's just saying to eat some broccoli, and everyone's like, "No, come on, man,
That's what it
come on,
is.
man.
That's what it
I
is.
don't want. Yeah, I don't want to eat that." He's like, "It's good for you, I'm telling you."
It's
And everyone's like, "No, it's against my diet. It's
I'm not putting that green poison in my system.
uh,
That's exactly what it is. You know what? It's like, why is it, Ammon, why is it, you guys, that you're always talking about following the prophet and you're always talking about Zion and you're always talking about priestcraft? And it's like, it's there every week in the
mm,
weekly readings. It is so fundamentally core to the struggle that we're going through and go through that it's like, it's there every week. It's there every week. Like, what did you expect it to be different? No, the children of Israel went through the same thing. The people in Jesus' time went through the same thing, right? We're just going through the same thing. We're just going through the same thing. So it's going to be there every single week, you know? This thing here, when Ammon read this, I started laughing because I thought, man, this could not be better, right? Um, the rejection could come through open opposition to the prophet, and then this next one through flippant disregard of his counsel. And the word flippant just was like, oh man, like I can just picture somebody like flippant. I can picture somebody like giving him the middle finger, like the flip of
mm.
it, just they're so flippant. And I looked up the word flippant, and the word flippant means talkative, voluble, of smooth, fluent, rapid speech, speaking with ease and rapidity, talkative, but marked by a disrespectful levity or casualness. And I thought, well, there it is. There, many will lift up their voices, curse God, and die. Many will be flippant and lift up their voice and curse God, right directly out of Doctrine and Covenants 45. But there was one other thing there that I thought, it's crazy. We seem to try to want to invent new ways to damn ourselves, but like we saw these two, but there's another one that's creeping up now recently more than ever. And there's one specific group that was like that. There's one specific group that's like queen of this now, right? The Jeanne d'Arcs. They're the queens of this, and that was they were flippant. They were flippant. They did openly oppose the prophet and disregard his counsel. They did, but then they did something else. They rewrote it. And that I think is even more dangerous because, Hugh Nibley goes into that when you rewrite the words. So when President Nelson says, hey, everyone needs to do jumping jacks, and then you take out jumping jacks, you put little brackets there and you say exercise. That's not what he said. That's not what he said. He said everyone needs to do jumping jacks. But see, when you rewrite it, then you can say what? Oh, we followed the prophet. We did what he asked us to do. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You rewrote what he said. You became a law unto yourself, and then you were obedient to that. And man, that one is becoming a very, very common one. And it's crazy to listen to people who in 2020 were saying openly, I do not have to follow the prophet, are now saying in 2024, I followed the prophet the whole time and I'm still gung-ho about following the prophet. It's easy to follow the prophet when you just take all of his counsel, scratch it out, and rewrite in what you're already doing. Just like the broccoli example. President Nelson says that you should eat broccoli. Scratch. President Nelson said that you should eat healthy. And to me, eating healthy is ice cream. And so I'm following the prophet. Do you see how you've just in just a couple of steps, these people are so delusional that they think, oh, I am following the prophet. No, you're not. You didn't even twist his words. You just erased them, put in your own words, and said, ah, yes, I'm following the prophet. And so I think that that's one that we need to pay attention to. With openly opposing the prophet or flippant disregard to his counsel, apathetic care. I think these are all great things. I think another one that we need to be very careful about now is there are people, precepts of men, that will just rewrite what the prophet said. They'll just rewrite it.
Interesting. Okay. All right, my turn. Cool. All right, my insight, my first one here. Now, both my insights straight up are very simple, straightforward. Bit of manual, the scripture, a bit of manual, and my thoughts on it. Real simple stuff here. So, Doctrine and Covenants 23, verses 1 and 2. This is to Oliver Cowdery. I think actually Micah touched a little bit on this here at the end of his first insight there. So the Lord says, behold, I speak unto you, Oliver, a few words. Behold, thou art blessed and art under no condemnation, but beware of pride, lest thou but beware of pride, lest thou shouldst enter into temptation. Make known thy calling unto the church and also before the world, and thy heart shall be open to preach the truth from henceforth and forever. Amen. So the Lord had this, in section 23, gave little things to a whole bunch of people, little revelations through Joseph to a bunch of people here. So this was Oliver's little revelation for him. Firstly, I'd love to hear from the Lord that I'm under no condemnation. That would be really nice to hear. But it's very interesting that he gives him this warning. Beware of pride, lest thou shouldst enter into temptation. So, so it's very interesting that the Lord chose to caution him to beware of pride, because it ended up being exactly what caused him to leave the church for a time, right? I don't know. I can't remember how long it was. I think it might have said in the readings this week, but it was like at least 10 years or something. It was a good amount of time. But that was literally why Oliver left the church. He did come back, but that's why he left the church. So this is a really quick and easy example of like a fulfillment of a revelation from God through Joseph that came true. Like just a real simple, beautiful, simple example of a revelation from Joseph Smith that ends up coming true. I mean, not that he said that he would do this, but he warned him of it, and it just happened to be that was the warning he needed that he did not heed. Anyway, so the manual had a good section called "Beware of Pride, lest thou shouldst enter into temptation." It says Oliver Cowdery was instrumental. Now, Micah might have read this, I can't remember, but I'm going to read it anyway. Was instrumental in the translation and publication of the Book of Mormon, and he recently had been ordained as second elder in the church when the revelation recorded in Doctrine and Covenants 23 was received. However, the Lord, knowing Oliver's strengths and weaknesses, counseled him to beware of pride. Regarding this counsel, President James E. Faust of the First Presidency said Oliver had great intellect and enjoyed marvelous spiritual blessings. However, over time, he forgot the Lord's warning and pride entered into his heart. Brigham Young later said of this pride, I have seen men who belonged to this kingdom and who really thought that if they were not associated with it, it could not progress. One man especially whom I now think of was peculiarly gifted in self-reliance and general ability. He said as much to the prophet Joseph a number of times as to say that if he left the kingdom, it could not progress any further. And I'm just like, imagine saying that and thinking like the pride. That is such a prideful thing to even think and say. I speak of Oliver Cowdery. He forsook it, and it still rolled on and still triumphed over every opposing foe and bore off safely all those who clung to it. When difficulties arose among the Saints in Kirtland, Ohio, 1837, Oliver Cowdery fell out of harmony with the prophet Joseph Smith and other church leaders and relocated to Missouri. In 1838, church leaders in Missouri charged Oliver Cowdery with persecuting church leaders with vexatious lawsuits, seeking to destroy the character of Joseph Smith, not abiding ecclesiastical authority in temporal affairs. Just quickly here, Joseph Smith died in 1840, and Oliver came back in 1848. I think this just popped into my head right now. It's not in my thoughts at all here. Wouldn't he feel terrible having all these vexatious lawsuits against the church and seeking to destroy the character of Joseph? And then Joseph was martyred, and then Oliver decided to come back, but he could never right that. He could never right that wrong there. But I just think that's sad. Yeah, that's sad, man. Anyway, seeking to destroy the character of Joseph Smith, not abiding ecclesiastical authority in temporal affairs, and selling lands in Jackson County, which was against the counsel given by the Lord. So this guy was doing some damage, man. And leaving his calling as assistant president of the church and turning to the practice of law. Oliver refused to appear before the council, but he answered by letter. He denied the church's right to dictate how he should conduct his life and answered that his fellowship with the church be ended. Such a sad thing. So Oliver was excommunicated on April 12, 1838. He remained unaffiliated with the church for 10 years. There you go, 10 years. But was rebaptized on November 12, 1848 in Canesville, Iowa. And here's the other kicker to it. Before Oliver could arrange to join the Saints in Salt Lake Valley, he became very ill in Richmond, Missouri, where he died on March the 3rd, 1850. So at least he got to come back. I'll give him that. I'm really glad he did for his sake. Because cursings, all right? There's some serious ones with what he did there. So anyway, here's my thoughts on this. A couple little good lessons from Oliver's example in history. The first is to know and understand that there is no one person or even group of people that are so instrumental and indispensable to the Lord that they can afford to proudly consider, that the Lord needs them to fulfill his works. There might be a couple of exceptions to that. Joseph Smith might be an exception to that rule because he was prophesied throughout history as being the prophet that would open this dispensation and perform these works by name, right? But in all honesty, if somehow he failed his mission, which the Lord knew he wouldn't anyway, the Lord could replace him too, I imagine. But the Lord knew he wouldn't, obviously. But in general, the Lord doesn't need us. He doesn't need us. We need him. And we should be grateful to participate in any works that he allows us to participate in. We got it the wrong way around. If you're thinking the other way around, like Oliver, that's the wrong way. It's the prideful way. It's just incorrect. We should be grateful for the opportunity. Any calling or responsibility we receive, right? Elect, is a great, even if small, way to contribute to the Lord's kingdom. And we should accept such callings of responsibility with gratitude and faith. And that will make us these elect men and women. As I and we have said many times previously, I'd just be happy if the Lord can have me participate in the redemption of Zion and the building of the New Jerusalem in any way. As we often joke, we will gladly be the toilet scrubbers in Zion. But if we aren't ready, willing, or able, then the Lord will find others and we will lose the opportunity and blessing, right, of being able to do that. The Lord doesn't need us. He will find people he can use. The second lesson here is to beware of pride, literally, to be aware of it, to bridle and temper and control it, lest it have disastrous negative effects on your life and salvation. And it's great and miraculous that Oliver, excuse me, returned to the church after 10 years. But again, he wouldn't have got to right that wrong with Joseph, and I think that would probably cut him deeply. Um, and the other thing is that he never made it to Salt Lake with the rest of the saints. He became ill and he died. And if he hadn't let pride control his actions, he likely would have been there with them that entire time. There's a few things to learn from his life and his mistakes there. So let us have wisdom and learn from the mistakes of history. That's how you gain wisdom. So Oliver's a couple of good examples of what not to do.
Amen. Not and but one of those things where it's like not an example of not what not to do, but yet came back. And so it's like we it's so funny. We use these examples all the time, right? The other guy was the cream, right? The cream and the milk. And we always tell a story. We're like, are we gonna let a cream, upset us and get us kicked out of the kingdom? And we never mention the fact that like that guy came back. Like he came back. And so it's like it's fascinating that there's all these stories about these individuals who went through these events and yeah, for a time kicked themselves out of the kingdom, but we don't ever talk about them coming back. But once again, it's like Emma left, never came back, and some of the
Mm,
last things that she said on her deathbed were horrendous. Horrendous.
yeah,
I mean,
lies, honestly,
lies and
lies.
said that she hopes that the Latter-day Saints die like dogs. Like just horrible, horrible things. And it's like we don't want to talk about it. And so it's just
Yeah.
it's a really fascinating situation where we have and we do the same thing with a lot of stories, right? We do a lot of stories like with Bathsheba. We like to dump it all on David, and Bathsheba was just some innocent naked woman, that just didn't had no idea that the king was looking or why the king would want to call her up and lied to her husband and got him killed. But she was innocent, you know, because she was so scared because David was the king. Like, what could she do? And it's like I don't know, tell the truth and die like the rest of the Christians martyrs. Like I don't know. Like, have you not read the rest of the Bible? Like, let alone the Book of Mormon? You know, the followers that had to be tested and thrown into the fire. So it's one of those cases where it's like I'm sorry that Oliver had to go through this. And you know what? This thing you said here, man, how arrogant you have to believe that like if it's the work of God that you leaving would just get it to stop. And it's like, people actually every time that people have left Zion or bust, they've acted the same way. Acted the same way. There was a group of apostates that left the group
Yep.
and by I don't just mean ooh they're apostate. I mean oh yeah they're like full blown apostates, and believe that some man has ordained them some patriarchal order, and anyway they're crazies. But yeah they wrote a big old thing about like Zion or bust is gonna die, and no the firesides on Sunday are gonna die because they felt like them showing up unprepared and blabbering on Sundays was like holding everything together, you know? And you know what
Mm,
happened? Ziner Bus went on. If it's the work of the Lord, it's like it's gonna go on without you. It's gonna go on without you. There was a wise Jewish person talking about Jesus who said the same thing. He said, guys, if it's the work of man, it's gonna die on its own. Like, why bother if it's gonna die? But if it's the work of the Lord, there's nothing we can do to stop it, and we don't want to be found fighting against it. And it's, and it's like, hey, that Jew's smart. We should listen to that one. But yeah, it's the arrogance of just believing like, well, when I leave, everything's gonna fall apart. It's like no, and why it's so desperately important to need other people. Like you cannot understate the value of having a community of saints that want you to be better. They don't want you to lose. They don't want you to fall inactive. They don't want you to fall back asleep. The value of that, because man, it's going to get hard. Just like Oliver Cowdery, like to say, "Oh, we're immune from it." It's like we're not immune from it. We're not immune from these things. We can all fall away, and how desperately important and valuable it is to have other saints around who are there for you and who want to see the best for you and who can rejoice when good things happen to you. How just, and going to my first point, Ashley and I didn't have that for many years. Didn't have that for many years. And to now have just even just one is a blessing. But to have like multiple people, to have people like Ammon and Topher as friends, I never had friends like this. I never had friends that I could just talk about the gospel with. Are you kidding me? The fact that Topher and Ammon take time out of their week, they could be doing other things that they enjoy. They could be going on more cruises or playing games, but they're taking the time to talk about Jesus and his gospel. And it's like, where are you going to find that, man? Where are you going to find that? And it's like, I spent my whole life looking for it, man, and I never found it. And so it's like, how grateful I am to even just have two, let alone this community that care about this stuff. So you're not going to get any better insulation against falling away like Oliver than just link yourself with men like Brigham Young. If Oliver Cowdery had just linked himself better to men like Brigham Young and to those men, he wouldn't have left. Brigham Young wouldn't have let him. But you get in with the wrong crowd and you start gossiping and you start backbiting and you start doing these things, and then before you know it, you've left with them.
Yeah. Amen to that. And
All right.
where's Emin? Is he gone? I don't know what's
I
going
didn't
on
get a
there.
message. He did.
No.
He did.
Yeah.
All right,
All
should I
right.
just go to my
Well,
last one? Roll
yeah,
on.
yeah,
Okay.
go on.
Roll on. All right, here we go. So, from the student manual here, why does that seem so small? Did I do the wrong font? Maybe I zoomed out. What does it mean to take up the cross? The term take up your cross is found in both ancient and modern scripture, including at least 3 references in the Doctrine and Covenants. So it might be important if the Savior keeps using it. In Matthew 16, the Savior says, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself. I love how that's first, deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. It's kind of funny if you're pursuing him for the sake of joy, it seems like the first thing wouldn't be listed as denying yourself. But anyway, the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible provides the meaning of this term is given by Jesus Christ himself. And now for a man to take up his cross is to deny himself of all ungodliness and every worldly lust and keep my commandments. Elder James E. Talmage wrote the cross to be taken up may be heavy, perhaps to be dragged because too burdensome to be borne. We are apt to assume that self-denial is the sole material of our cross, but this is true only as we regard self-denial in its broadest sense, comprising both positive and negative aspects. And this was a really smart point here that he made here. One man's cross may consist mostly in refraining from doing things which he is inclined, but another's in doing what he would fain escape. And I think that this is the one that we don't talk about, and this is one we do as saints the most often. The ones that we're trying to escape from, our responsibilities that we're trying to escape from. One's besetting sin is evil indulgent, his neighbor's a lazy inattention to the activities required by the gospel of Jesus Christ, coupled perchance with puritanical rigor in other observances. End quote. It's like, oh my goodness, so good. And this should be in blue. And reading that, it reminded me of 2 weeks ago going over Moroni 10 verses 31. I don't know what that was. I think 32. It's not 31 through 31. And deny yourself of all ungodliness. When we went over that, there was the Elder Neely Maxwell quote where he said, any list of our present personal indulgences is actually an index, but a reverse index to joys. Joys we will not experience until we do deny ourselves certain things. And so I wrote there, the Church of Joy actually means, more aptly put, we're the church of self-denial. But I love here how Talmage also includes inattention to the activities required by the gospel of Jesus Christ. So, meaning things we know we should be doing but aren't. And then he says, coupled perchance with puritanical rigor in other observances, which I absolutely love. So it's, for example, like somebody living in a $3 million house, divorced, living wicked, etc. But they go to the temple 5 times a week, and they believe Fortnite is literally of the devil. It's this puritanical rigor in certain things, but also just I'm not going to do these other things that I know that I should be doing. Hugh Nibley said he, Satan, decoys our minds, which is a favorite word of Brigham Young, decoys, with false words and appearances. A favorite trick is to put the whole blame on sex, right? Which is what puritanical observances typically focus on. Put the whole blame on sex. Sex can be a pernicious appetite, but it runs a poor second to the other. For example, we are wont to think of Sodom as the original sex pot, but according to all accounts, this was the iniquity of thy sister Sodom, that great wealth made her people cruel and self righteous. The worst sinners, according to Jesus, are not the harlots and publicans, but the religious leaders, with their insistence on proper dress and grooming, their careful observance of all the rules, their precious concern for status symbols, their strict legality, their pious patriotism. Right? End quote from Hugh Nibley in Approaching Zion. So another example would be somebody hyper fixated on America and the Constitution and sex this and sex that, but who are completely okay with priestcrafts and Babylon and idolatry, like those that claim a man's job is to make loads of money while they ignore their God-given calling to garden and to eat what they personally grow so as to stand independent of all creatures under heaven. The call is to deny yourself of all ungodliness. Matthew chapter 23. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithe of mint and anise. I don't know how to say that one. Cumin, and have omitted the weighty.
Anise.
Anise.
Sorry. Anise, yeah.
Anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier things, the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought ye to have done, and not to leave the other undone. Ye blind guides who strain at a gnat and swallow a camel, who make yourselves appear unto men that ye would not commit the least sin, and yet ye yourselves transgress the whole law. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye make clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within they are full of extortion and excess. I love that. They're full of extortion and excess. That's priestcraft, folks. Ye blind Pharisees, cleanse first the cup and platter within, that the outside of them may be clean also. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but are within full of bones of the dead and of all uncleanliness. Even so, ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within you are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. Let's not leave the weightier matters of the law undone. The weightier things we must deny ourselves of by taking up his cross and following him.
Amen to that. All right. Well, I don't have much I think I can add to this, but there's some great quotes in this though. I mean, Hugh Nibley, that decoys quote there, and obviously Neil A. Maxwell. But Talmage in the first thing from the manual there, Talmage talking about what it is to actually, deny yourself and take up your cross. And I'm thinking it's like which part was it? So one man's cross may consist mostly in refraining from doing things to which he's inclined, and another is in doing what he would fain escape, right? So one's besetting evil is an evil indulgence, and his neighbors are lazy inattention to activities, right? So we call that like sins of omission and commission, right? So some people have issues because they do things, and then many, and I'd say probably most common is people not doing things that they should do. Like, I mean, we're all guilty of that, right? Like it's probably slightly easier to avoid doing the things we know we shouldn't. It's actually quite hard sometimes to like not do the things the Lord wants us to do, because there's almost no lightning bolt to hit you when that happens. But when you know you've done something wrong, it's kind of obvious. So I think that's almost in a lot of regards even more dangerous one, because it's laziness, right? Laziness, inattention to the activities required by the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's so easy, and we all do it, definitely, to whatever degree. Um, and anyway, just made me think back to the previous example you used. It's like someone, some people are no problem eating broccoli, right? They're eating the broccoli already. They avoid ice cream, and but they don't go to church. Things like this. Or it's like some people like eat ice cream, um, and go to church. Like, or use whatever combination you want. But some people find it easier to do what they're told, and what's expected of them, and to like also be lazy on other things. And some people find it easier probably to not do that, but to not be late. I don't know if you catch my drift. Anyway, there's both types, and it's we got to be careful of both. But both are, I think the laziness one's the scarier one, because it's so easy to not do something, but no one knows except you, if that makes sense. You know, no, the missionaries ask you to go out teaching with them, and you go, nah, I don't really want to. It's only you. The missionaries ain't dobbing on you. And they just think you're busy or whatever. It's only you that know deep down that you could have gone. Things like that. Like just little things. It's only you that knows. You and the Lord. You and the Lord. And then, so again, I'm not going to add anything much else to this. The part though, Matthew 23, talking about the hypocrites, the scribes, the Pharisees, as hypocrites, the whited sepulchres, and what I think is a huge problem these days is it's what we do and don't do, obviously, but the problem is what we show, what we choose to show. And social media is a killer for this. So everyone is showing forth on social media their best self all the time, pretty much, right? It's very rare that you find someone who shows their literal reality. It's always, look what we did today. It's the best, it looks so fun. Like everyone, I'm it's not, I'm not guilty of it. I'm guilty, like me and my wife, for instance, of course, we post the things we do that are fun. And people always message us and goes, man, your life looks amazing. You guys are always having so much fun and whatever. It's like, yeah, you're seeing uh, a 20th of a week or something there. You know what I mean? Like our lives look fun. The point I'm getting at is that we have to be careful. Micah had a couple examples here, right? Like, it's easy to live you can live in a mansion, you can be rich, you can do all this and that. And at the same time, you can, show everyone, like you can be wicked, right? To a degree. To have a temple recommend you have to be living a certain degree, right? But you can be doing all sorts of whatever, right? And then you go to the temple 5 times a week, and you show people that you go to the temple 5 times a week, and that's what people see. And they don't really understand sometimes, or maybe they can get an inkling, but there's other things that you've got going on. You know what I mean? So what's interesting is what we do, but what we show. And everyone's showing the whited sepulchre all the time. And let's be honest, many, if not all of us, are full of dead man's bones to some degree. You know what I mean? So, anyway, it's just it's the hypocrisy we're all guilty of, I think, to some degree, and that's what we need to be careful of as well. And that's why you'll find that I lean overly honest in these videos. I don't like to I'm not like to pretend that I'm anything that I'm not. If anyone here is a sinner, it's me. You know what I mean? Like I'm nothing, and I don't want to ever pretend or have people suppose that I'm anything that I'm not. And so I'm not a whited sepulchre. I'm trying to be a dirty one. I don't know. But anyway, that's the risk, right? We got to not let's not pretend let's not all sit here pretending like we're all flipping
I hang my dead man's
fantastic.
bones right on the outside.
On the outside. Yeah, but you know what I mean, right? Like, you know what I mean? That's what everyone's
100%.
guilty of it to a degree. And I think it's something we should all be aware of at least, and really strive to not do that, because it's really easy to show on the outside what you're really not. And I just don't think the Lord doesn't like it. Anywho, Ammon is still off with the fairies somewhere. So, all right, well then I've got my last insight here. So, this one is another, quick and easy one. It's Stockton coming at section 25. Verse 10, and verily I say unto thee that thou shalt lay aside the things of this world and seek for the things of a better. It's a good little piece of advice. So, and if I'm not mistaken, was that said to Emma Smith? Was that to Emma? Because I think you mentioned that in your first insight. I can't recall. I should have probably noted that down, but I think it was to Emma possibly. So the manual for this says President Gordon B. Hinckley commenting on the Lord's instructions to Emma. Okay, it was to Emma Smith in Doctrine and Covenants 25:10 said, I feel he was not telling Emma that she should not feel concerned about a place to live, food on her table, and clothing. He was saying to her that she should not be obsessed with these things, as so many of us are wont to be. He was telling her to get her thoughts on the higher things of life, the things of righteousness and goodness, matters of charity and love for others, the things of eternity. That's a really good, like Gordon B. Hinckley, it's a really good way to describe what the Lord said there. And then so the manual, the Come Follow Me manual, had a little section on this as well, and it said, lay aside the things of the world, seek for things of a better. As you ponder the Lord's counsel in Doctrine and Covenants 25:10, it might help to make a list of the things of this world he wants you to lay aside. I thought that's a good, probably none of us will do it, but like it's a good little activity you could probably actually do. What are the things of this world that he would want you to lay aside? And honestly, that's quite a list, I think, for most of us. That'd be a hefty list we could probably make. And then you could make a list of things of a better world he wants you to seek. It's probably a good activity, and I'll leave that for you for your homework. You might choose, and it goes on to say, you might choose at least one thing from the first list that you will lay aside and one thing from the second list that you will seek. It's like pretty good. And I just listed here a couple examples that popped to my head. Riches, so what things should we lay aside? Riches, mansions, outdoor furniture, cushions, anything Babylon tells you is important. Just silly things, right? And riches and anything that Babylon says is important, I can hazard a guess the Lord would be happy for you to lay it aside. Obviously, it's not easy, but recall that the Lord said to her, or the way that Gordon B. Hinckley defined this was that he's not saying that you don't want to support your family, have food on your table, and have a job and a place to live, but not be obsessed with these things. It's the obsession for Babylon and the obsession for gaining more of it. That is the problem, right? It's focusing on the wrong thing, gaining more of the wrong thing in the wrong direction. Then the Come Follow Me manual goes on to say, President Russell M. Nelson has given counsel and promises that about putting aside many things of this world. And then it directs us to a talk called Spiritual Treasures. And so I was like, I'll look at his talk. I read his talk. And his talk had a couple of great little quotes in it. So I'm just going to share those. So he said, every woman and every man who makes covenants with God and keeps those covenants and who participates worthily in priesthood ordinances has direct access to the power of God. Those who are endowed in the house of the Lord receive a gift of God's priesthood power by virtue of their covenant, along with a gift of knowledge to know how to draw upon that power. And then he then goes on and speaks about embarking on an endeavor to determine what the Lord would have us focus on. And he says, so again, this is President Russell M. Nelson. This is in 2019, by the way, this talk in General Conference. He says, part of this endeavor will require you to put aside many things of this world. Sometimes we speak almost casually about walking away from the world with its contention, pervasive temptations, and false philosophies, but truly doing so requires you to examine your life meticulously and regularly. As you do so, the Holy Ghost will prompt you about what is no longer needful, what is no longer worthy of your time and energy. As you shift your focus away from worldly distractions, some things that seem important to you now will recede in priority. You will need to say no to some things, even though they may seem harmless. Just great advice from a prophet of God. As you embark upon and continue this lifelong process of consecrating your life to the Lord, the changes in your perspective, feelings, and spiritual strength will amaze you. Man, I love President Nelson, eh? Far out. Like, people are nuts if you don't believe he's a prophet and don't want to follow him. Fantastic advice, honestly. So practical too. And then verse 13, of that same section, 25, says, Wherefore lift up thy heart and rejoice, and cleave unto the covenants which thou hast made. And I think I put those quotes in the wrong order because that first quote was about the covenants that you've made and attending the temple, making those covenants, and being able to draw upon God's gift, God's priesthood power, and having that gift of knowledge to draw upon that power. So that's cleaving unto the covenants which we've made, right? And because the Come Follow Me manual says, reading verse 13, think about the covenants you have made with Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ, and what does it mean to cleave unto these covenants? And how do your covenants help you lay aside the things of this world and seek for things that are better? And again, that's homework for everyone just to consider. I think these are really good questions that the manual posed for people to consider this week. So again, I'll leave you to consider these things, but let us all, I love how President Nelson termed it, meticulously and regularly lay aside the things of this world, or to what did he say? Uh, examine our lives, and to lay aside the things of this world and examine our lives for. Remember, he talked about removing um, debris that's holding us in Babylon, right, and preventing us from focusing on or participating in current or future events that we can only participate in if we break free from the things of this world. Yeah. Don't obsess over the wrong things.
Yeah, that debris one was about he compared it to the temple or the stuff around the temple. That was a
Yeah.
great visual representation. That was really really good. That's a great scripture, man. I love it. Lay aside the things of the world, seek for things of a better. Um, I think that once again, it ties into that same concept, right? Like I think that like you were saying, a lot of people can lay aside the ice cream, but they're not going to eat the broccoli, right? They're going to be like, well, I can lay aside the cigarettes and stuff, but I'm not going to eat the broccoli, right? They can, lay aside the things of the world. That's only half the equation, right? You got to then seek for the broccoli. You got to seek for the things of a better. I think that's and take up your cross and follow him is how well you're doing that. So I think this is great. It's funny. I won't say much about the rest of this. President Russell M. Nelson's talk. There was I actually did a talk breakdown of this President Russell M. Nelson talk, but I set the video to hidden, so only those on Zion or Bus Discord have access to it. So if you're curious about that, you can. I get asked about that talk a lot. So yeah, really good one. Really good one. And are we gonna do it though? Are we gonna do it? That's great. Are we gonna do
That's
it?
the thing.
Are we gonna
Yeah,
lay it aside?
that and then that activity that it says to do that, I think is actually really good. And it's like, oh, will anyone actually do it? It's because the hard thing is you do that little activity, but then it makes you actually consider what you should change, and it means you have to do something. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
anyway,
you write down Ford Bronco, and then you go, Ford Bronco
hmm.
does sound good. Now I'm thinking about it. And you start thinking about it a little too long. You're like, wait, that was the opposite of what this exercise was supposed to do. Wow, I've just
Uh,
hung my dead man's bones right on out there for me to see. That was terrible.
uh, that's good. All right. Well, apologies for Ammon. Obviously, something had to must have come up, and he bailed. But that's the end here. So thank you again, brothers and sisters, for joining us this week with our Come Follow Me insights, which again we love to share, love to give, and we are so blessed to be able to do so every week. We're so blessed to live in this day and age, which is the days in which the Lord will perform His mightiest works, His most wonderful works, the days directly before the second coming of Jesus Christ, which we are excited to see and participate in to whatever degree we can. We are Zion or Bust, or the kingdom of God or nothing, and we know that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the Lord's kingdom on the earth at this point. And this is the engine and vehicle that is going to get us to where we want to be. So we're grateful for the restored gospel in our lives and the fact that we can talk about it every week. We're trying to do the best we can to bring about Zion, and sometimes it feels like it can be hard to make much a difference in that regard. But if we all try to do that, we can all make a difference. And if we remember that we are all elect, right? So Emma was an elect lady, but we're all elect as well. We can be and we should be elect. We're elected to do whatever the Lord asks us to do, and all of us will be different, but we all have something. Remember that if you do the right things, you're blessed, and if you don't follow the prophet, you're cursed. It's not as simple as not following the prophet and just chilling. There are serious cursings if you don't want to follow the prophet. Important to remember, and that the disparity between blessings and cursings is large. And I think to Micah's point, beware of rewriting what the prophet says. Let's also learn from Oliver Cowdery's mistakes and beware of pride. And then the last couple of things we talked about was let's deny ourselves and take up our cross and put our bones on the outside of the sepulchre. Let's not pretend to be who we're not. Get those bones on the outside. And hang them out, just hang 'em out there. And let's also lay aside the things of the world and not obsess with the wrong things with Babylon, right? Let's try and get ourselves out of there as best as we can. If you want to learn any more about anything we talk about, please come and check us out on Discord and Facebook. Discord especially is where all the great stuff is. You'll find links below. And also come and share your insights with us because again, we cover a very small portion of the weekly readings. Honestly, a very small portion. We do a couple of insights each. We don't have time to do more. And there's so much. Honestly, I end up with notes and notes, and I can't, only talk about a couple of bits and pieces from them. So there's a lot of good stuff, and we'd love to hear you share your thoughts. Remember that Zion cannot be built without a group of righteous saints who knit their hearts together in unity. Right? So we need everyone on board. And that's the hope. And if we do this, we'll bring about Zion, right? Hopefully soon. We are two of the three brothers. We love you, brothers and sisters, and we'll see you next week.
Love you. Love you, brothers. Sisters. See you next week.